I've talked a lot about different aspects of writing, but I never talked about the physical act of writing. I'd like to believe I entered the timeline at a really cool point. Started out with pen and paper, of course. Then, when I wanted to actually write out stories that somebody could read, and with my handwriting, I mean read, I switched to a manual typewriter. My dad had one of those ancient dinosaur typewriters that you literally had to pound with the keys to get it to type anything. So you can imagine the terror I was on equipment when I got to high school and took my first ever typing class on an electric typewriter. The early versions of word processors came out shortly thereafter. The first one I had was a Tandy 1000, I think it was. Does anybody remember those? I would type up whatever I was working on and saved it to a cassette. You don't see that anymore. Then, of course, word processors got more sophisticated, not only how to use them, but how you save your data, to the point where we have the word processors that we have now. You can use those on desktops, laptops, even phones. And of course, the software I use a lot nowadays is the voice transcription software. That's helped out a lot. And yeah, some of the words that I use, the software doesn't always get it right, especially the custom made planet and alien names that I come up with, but that's a small price to pay. But with all of that, I still very much enjoy writing by hand. I don't know, I think it's something about the tactile sensation. It's been with me forever, and I just like it. And I gotta say, though, it's not always been comfortable for me. When I was 13, playing in a softball game that summer, I hit a leaky ground ball to the third baseman. I was a pretty decent sprinter even then, so I hauled as fast as I could down the first base line. And the first baseman stepped on the bag, was actually standing on the bag to receive the throw from the third baseman just as I was getting there. There was a collision. I fell to the ground, got up. Uh-oh, this don't feel good. So I walked off the field. My teammates are yelling and screaming, "You were safe, get back on first base. You were called safe." This don't feel safe. So I went up to the bleachers, right where my dad was sitting. I said, "We're going to the emergency room again, aren't we?" Now, by that point, I had broken a bone 3 times in 3 years, so I think my dad was used to it by then. While I was getting the cast put on, the doctor told me that as I get older and as the weather gets colder, I'll start feeling arthritic conditions if I use that wrist way too much. The doctor said, "It's a good thing you only broke your left wrist." Doc, I am left handed. So, yeah, I still feel the discomfort every once in a while, and I just fight through it. I still want to write by hand. Because I'm not always at my desk or have my laptop available with me, I have no problem using all kinds of journals, notebooks. Marble notebooks is what they're usually called. I even have a notebook that I use to write down ideas, schedules, little things I need to be reminded of, or something like that, or to work out certain things. And this one I will take almost everywhere. Back when I worked in a control center for a security company, I used to have this notebook off to the side. And in the occasion that I might have a few seconds to write something down, I'll pull this notebook out, jot it down, and get right back to work. Now, there was one time several of us were in the control center, and one of the officers asked me a question. I pulled out the notebook, turned to the right page. I said, okay, this is what we're supposed to do. I wrote this down. One of the young security rovers made the comment, say, you're always writing in that book. I'm going to start calling that the Book of Steve. You know what? I kind of like that name. So the Book of Steve it is, and I still refer to it by that name. Now, I also use those marble notebooks as a personal journal. I'm not about to call it a diary. Dear diary, please get me out of this job. Well, actually, that did work. But anyway, I write down certain thoughts as they come to me. I work out personal problems, and it's been a huge benefit to me, to the point where I still do it. And if I ever need to say, well, I need to write something every day, I'll just write something creative that I'll probably never show anybody. It's more on a personal level, but I'll write it in the journal. Now, recently I started experimenting with other types of journals. I kind of like this one because it's got the old school manual typewriter keys on it. And it's lined, so I got plenty of room to write all kinds of weird stuff on there. And for when I finished filling that out, I bought a different type of one. This is, I don't know the brand name, but it was imported from India, from a shop right here in town. This one's got a little latch to it. And if I can do it right. And this one does not have lines in it, so writing in it's going to be very interesting. But I'm looking forward to the challenge. Why not? And in the event that you ask, why marble notebooks? Back when my kids were still going to school, a retail chain used to have a very good back to school sale. Usually started in July. And those marble notebooks were 25 cents each. I got an extra quarter in my pocket, let's buy one. Got an extra $1 in my pocket, let's buy 4. To the point where I just started overloading on them. I went a little nuts at one point. Now, just to give you an idea of how nuts I went, I have, at last count, about 38 of these notebooks left. I haven't bought a new one in 5 years. So there's a slightly different look at my writing experience. And yes, like I said before, it can be somewhat trying with the wrist issue. But that's why I have a word processor and voice transcription software. So the game continues. And the game, as far as I'm concerned, will always continue.